If you want to learn more about how we survived this, trust me, you'll want to subscribe. The journey is far from over. As a call to join a larger community, encourage viewers to feel part of something bigger by subscribing. The Pack High Council gathered in a grand, dark chamber to deliver its verdict. Hector, Zyla, and Maya stood before them, resolute yet anxious, as the council leader addressed them. Their crime was unforgivable by Pack standards, advocating for peace and cooperation with other species. A notion so foreign, so disturbing, that it struck at the heart of everything the Pack valued: conquest, dominance, and pride. The leader's voice was cold as he condemned them, announcing their sentence with finality. They were to be banished to a primitive world, far from the vast technological achievements of the Pack civilization. Earth. A planet deemed insignificant, filled with life forms the Pack dismissed as weak and simple. Before they could protest, the Council transported them across the stars. In an instant, they materialized in a dense forest, a mist clinging to the trees around them. The air was damp and smelled of leaves and soil, unfamiliar yet strangely invigorating. Hector looked at her companions, her eyes wide with bewilderment. Zyla brushed leaves from her hair, her mind racing to process the bizarre new surroundings, while Maya took in the silence, her senses overwhelmed by Earth's raw, unfiltered sounds. The hum of insects, the rustling of leaves, and distant bird calls contrasted sharply with the sterile silence of their technologically controlled homeworld. The three shared a look of disbelief. It was the first time in their lives that they felt truly vulnerable. They'd been stripped of their advanced tools, left with only their instincts, and whatever knowledge they could recall. As they began to walk, trying to make sense of their surroundings, the forest seemed to close in on them, every step echoing with uncertainty. Their footsteps were tentative, their alien forms concealed by the dense foliage, yet they felt exposed. In the distance, they spotted the glow of lights, faint, warm, human lights. The trio instinctively moved towards it, intrigued by this unfamiliar life form yet cautious of what they might find. As they drew closer, they began to observe human behavior from a safe distance. They saw people laughing, gathering around fire pits, and children playing under the watchful eyes of parents. The simplicity of it was almost hypnotic. They had grown up in a society where emotions were seen as weakness, where gatherings only served strategic or political purposes. But here, laughter and companionship seemed to flow naturally, unforced, genuine. Zyla, usually the most stoic, found herself unexpectedly drawn to these displays of warmth and connection. She turned to the others, quietly admitting how fascinating it was to see beings so openly connected to one another. Maya nodded, feeling an unfamiliar pang in her chest, a strange longing she didn't fully understand. Hector, the most analytical of the three, tried to make sense of this feeling. The trio had been raised to see themselves as superior, evolved beyond the need for such primitive bonds. Yet, in these brief moments of watching, something deep within them stirred. A few days passed as they observed the humans from afar, studying their customs and behaviors. Their initial judgments slowly shifted. Where they had expected ignorance, they saw resourcefulness. Where they assumed simplicity, they witnessed kindness and patience. One evening, as they watched from the edge of the town, a human named Sam, an older man with gentle eyes, approached them. They froze, unsure of how to react, but he simply smiled, asking if they needed help. His tone was soft, his concern genuine, and in that moment, something within them softened. It was a sensation foreign yet oddly comforting. They followed Sam to his small cabin, their caution tempered by curiosity. Inside, they marveled at the quaintness of it all. Wooden furniture, framed photographs, and the faint aroma of cooked food filled the air. Sam offered them water, and though they knew what water was, drinking it felt like partaking in a ritual of trust. For a moment, they felt they belonged. As the days turned into weeks, they adapted to life on Earth, though it was far from easy. The forest was their shelter, but they ventured closer to the town, gradually understanding the ways of this new world. They watched people struggle, yet persist, a resilience that puzzled them. Humans were fragile compared to their own kind, yet they possessed an inner strength that seemed to fuel them through life's difficulties. Each interaction, every observation, chipped away at the prejudices they once held. They saw human compassion in the way neighbors helped each other, even strangers. A farmer giving away extra produce, a mother comforting her child, a friend staying by another's side through illness. Hector, the keen observer, began piecing together a theory. These humans, though less advanced technologically, seemed to have something deeper. A kind of power that transcended physical strength or intelligence. Zyla, still hesitant, tried to hold on to the remnants of her old beliefs but found it increasingly hard. And Maya, the youngest, felt a growing attachment to this place, these people. One night, as they sat together under the stars, they spoke openly about the changes they were experiencing. Hector admitted her admiration for human kindness, a quality she had never understood but now respected. Zyla, though conflicted, confessed that the sense of community she observed here felt more genuine than anything in their homeland. Maya, quietly and almost shyly, admitted that she felt a bond with Earth itself, its air, its sounds, its people. They knew these feelings were forbidden in their world, seen as a sign of weakness, yet they couldn't ignore them. Sam welcomed them without hesitation, seeing their bewildered expressions and odd clothing as signs of travelers in need. Hector, Zyla, and Maya watched him cautiously, their instincts sharpened by years of distrust. Yet, as he guided them, explaining simple things like how to use basic tools and where to find food, they couldn't help but feel intrigued by his warmth. He didn't demand anything in return, which puzzled them deeply. In their world, help was always a means to an end, yet Sam's assistance seemed genuine, uncalculated. The next morning, the three tried to navigate basic human tasks, determined not to rely on anyone. Zyla struggled to light a fire, fumbling with matches, an invention so simple yet foreign. Maya attempted cooking, fascinated by the smell and texture of different ingredients, but failing miserably, producing a burnt mess. They shared a frustrated laugh, a rare moment of lightness that felt strange yet satisfying. In their culture, laughter was seldom encouraged, especially when it wasn't at someone else's expense. This shared struggle brought them closer, deepening their bond with each other and their curiosity about human life. As they roamed the small town, observing human interactions became their daily routine. Hector, the most analytical, tried to decode the various emotions humans expressed openly: empathy, joy, sorrow. She watched people cry at goodbyes and laugh over small victories, wondering if such displays weakened or strengthened them. She realized these emotions weren't signs of frailty, but of something more profound, something she lacked the vocabulary for but felt drawn to. One day, they attended a community gathering from a hidden vantage point. Townsfolk of all ages gathered, sharing food and stories. The scene felt alien to them. The pack never allowed gatherings unless they served strategic purposes. Here, it seemed like humans simply wanted to be together, no hidden agendas. Zyla found herself particularly moved by a young father comforting his child, whispering softly as he held her close. The simple gesture stirred something in her, an almost instinctive pull toward empathy she hadn't known existed within her. While Zyla felt this newfound empathy, Maya found herself increasingly drawn to human resilience. Observing people tending to gardens, fixing things, or just going about daily tasks, she admired the quiet strength humans displayed in facing the world's challenges. One rainy evening, they watched an elderly woman struggle to carry groceries in the storm. Without thinking, Maya ran to help her, ignoring the surprised looks as she took the heavy bags and walked alongside the woman. The woman thanked her with a gentle smile, calling her a good soul, a term Maya didn't fully understand but cherished deeply. This simple interaction left her with an inexplicable warmth, a feeling her own kind would dismiss as meaningless. As they grew accustomed to Earth, Hector, Zyla, and Maya couldn't ignore the contrast between their old lives and this new world. Their society valued dominance, perceiving compassion as weakness. Yet here, kindness and cooperation were everyday traits, so common that they often went unnoticed by the very people who practiced them. The girls began to realize that perhaps this was what true strength looked like, a quiet resilience paired with empathy. Living on Earth continued to challenge their views, and they often reflected on these contrasts during their nightly talks in the secluded forest they called home. Maya questioned why the pack was so quick to dismiss other races, why they never allowed themselves the chance to understand different forms of life. Hector responded thoughtfully, musing that maybe the pack's need for superiority came from a fear of what they didn't understand, a fear deeply ingrained in their culture. Zyla, though hesitant, agreed, admitting that humans seemed to draw strength from their relationships and connections, something the pack had abandoned long ago. Over time, they became less like observers and more like participants. Zyla developed a particular fondness for helping those in need, an urge she had never felt before. She noticed an elderly man who often struggled to keep up with his dog on their walks, and took it upon herself to assist him whenever she could. Each time, his gratitude deepened her appreciation for this strange new world. This simple kindness felt fulfilling in a way that defied her previous life's strict codes of honor and pride. Meanwhile, Hector continued her analysis, noticing patterns in human behavior that fascinated her. Humans, despite their vulnerabilities, seemed to possess an unbreakable spirit. Even in times of struggle, they found comfort in each other, a phenomenon she was only beginning to grasp. She watched a group of friends rally around one of their own who had lost a loved one, offering silent support through shared presence and understanding. This kind of emotional connection, so foreign to her own experiences, challenged her perception of strength, making her question everything she'd been taught. For Maya, the shift was even more profound. She became captivated by the human sense of purpose. Every day, she saw people going to work, building, fixing, creating, all seemingly small acts that added up to something greater. She found herself wanting to join in, to contribute in her own way, and began taking small tasks, from cleaning to organizing, helping without being asked. The gratitude she received in return was a feeling she couldn't put into words, a sense of belonging that her own society never provided. Gradually, they each found a role within the town, integrating themselves more naturally than they had imagined possible. People came to recognize them, appreciating their quiet assistance and kind gestures. Without realizing it, they were forming connections, learning that strength could manifest in vulnerability, kindness, and empathy. Their once rigid views softened, reshaped by the daily experiences that, though mundane, revealed the strength in simplicity. In their hearts, they began to sense a change. They didn't speak of it openly, but each felt an emotional pull toward this world, an attachment that felt as solid as it was indescribable. For the first time, they were free of the judgment and expectations that had weighed them down in their own society. Here, they could simply be, unburdened and connected in ways they had never known. Earth was no longer a punishment, it was a place of discovery, a world that welcomed them not as conquerors but as equals. And with every passing day, they felt a little more human. As time passed, Hector, Zyla, and Maya found themselves immersed in human life more deeply than they ever intended. The initial curiosity they felt towards humans had grown into something far more complex, something they struggled to define. Hector, always the analytical one, tried to quantify her feelings, examining each interaction and reaction as if she could reduce human nature to a formula. But the more she observed, the more it eluded her. The humans she met possessed a resilience that went beyond mere survival, an adaptability that seemed rooted in something intangible, something powerful. Hector found herself drawn to a young scientist named Ethan, whose curiosity about the universe mirrored her own. He was bright and compassionate, constantly seeking knowledge and understanding. During their conversations, Hector felt her walls weakening, intrigued not only by what Ethan knew but by how he shared it, with an openness she'd never encountered among her own people. She had expected humans to be limited, confined to their small sphere of existence, but Ethan shattered that belief. He talked about his dreams of exploration, of reaching beyond Earth's atmosphere, and each word deepened Hector's admiration for him. Without realizing it, she found herself inspired by his optimism, a feeling that challenged her perception of what it meant to be strong. Zyla, meanwhile, was experiencing a different kind of bond. She had formed a friendship with a quiet artist named Noah, who lived at the edge of town. Noah's life was simple, his days spent painting landscapes and people, capturing moments that most would overlook. Zyla was drawn to his art, fascinated by how he could capture the world's beauty in such detail. She found herself visiting him often, at first under the pretense of learning about Earth's culture, but soon for reasons she couldn't quite admit. Noah seemed to see through her guarded exterior, his gentle nature breaking down her defenses. In his art, she saw reflections of a life she'd never imagined, one of peace and harmony, without the need for conquest or power. One day, as they walked through the woods together, Noah asked her about her world. Zyla hesitated, unsure how to explain the harsh reality of her people. When she finally spoke, she described a society where emotions were suppressed, where beauty was seen as a distraction, and where strength was measured only by one's willingness to dominate. Noah listened without judgment, his silence a comfort. When she finished, he simply nodded, as if he understood the weight she carried. His acceptance of her, with all her complexities and flaws, touched something deep within her, making her question everything she'd been taught. Maya's journey was equally transformative but in a different way. She had developed a connection with a kind-hearted mechanic named Daniel, whose easygoing nature and sense of humor made her feel at ease. Daniel was unlike anyone she'd ever met, grounded, practical, and utterly unpretentious. He had no grand ambitions, no lofty dreams, but he found joy in the everyday, in fixing things, helping others, and simply being present. Maya admired his calmness, his ability to find satisfaction in life's small details. In her world, contentment was a rare thing, dismissed as complacency. But here, in Daniel's presence, she felt a kind of peace she'd never known. As the days turned into weeks, Maya realized that her feelings for Daniel went beyond friendship. She felt a warmth in his presence, a sense of belonging that unsettled and excited her. She admired his strength, not in the physical sense but in his unshakable kindness, his loyalty to his friends and family, and his dedication to his work. Daniel had shown her that strength wasn't always loud or forceful. Sometimes, it was as simple as being there for others. Maya found herself drawn to this quiet resilience, seeing in it a power that her people had overlooked. Their conversations deepened, each one revealing new facets of human life that fascinated her. She began to understand that emotions were not weaknesses but sources of strength, fueling the very resilience that allowed humans to endure hardship. She saw how love, friendship, and loyalty created bonds stronger than any force she'd known, bonds that gave people courage to face even the most daunting challenges. These feelings, which she had once dismissed as irrelevant, were beginning to shape her own identity, molding her into someone new. As the three of them shared their experiences, they realized they had each found a different part of humanity to love. Hector loved the pursuit of knowledge, the drive to understand the universe. Zyla loved the beauty in human expression, the way they captured the world's essence in art. Maya loved the resilience, the quiet strength that came from caring for others. Each of them had discovered something unique, something that resonated with their own inner selves, challenging the beliefs they had held their entire lives. Their nightly conversations took on a new tone, less analytical and more reflective. They spoke of love, not as a weakness, but as a force that drove humans to extraordinary heights. They discussed vulnerability, seeing it not as a flaw but as a sign of trust, a willingness to share one's true self. These concepts were foreign to them, yet they felt more real than anything they had known before. For the first time, they understood that strength could be gentle, that power could be quiet, and that there was beauty in vulnerability. One evening, as they sat around a small fire, Hector voiced a thought that had been forming in her mind for days. She admitted that she no longer saw Earth as a punishment but as a gift, a chance to see life through a different lens. Zyla nodded in agreement, confessing that she couldn't imagine returning to a life without the freedom to feel, to connect, to create. Maya, her voice soft but firm, declared that she felt more at home here than she ever had in her own world. In those quiet moments, they realized they had found something precious, something that transcended the limitations of their past. They had discovered the true strength of humanity, a strength that lay not in physical power or technological superiority, but in the heart. They understood now that love, compassion, and empathy were the most powerful forces in the universe, capable of bridging worlds and reshaping lives. Each of them knew that their lives had changed forever. They could never go back to the world they came from, not after seeing the world through human eyes. They had been transformed, their once rigid views softened by the warmth of human connection. In the end, they were no longer just exiles. They were part of this world, bound to it by ties stronger than any they had ever known. And in that realization they found peace, a peace they had never known and would cherish for the rest of their lives. The days of wondering whether they would return home grew fewer, replaced by a quiet certainty that Earth was where they belonged now. This conviction came from a shared understanding that each of them had forged a life here, an identity defined not by their past but by the people they had met and the values they had come to respect. They had found a sense of purpose, a belonging that transcended anything they had known before. Hector, Zyla, and Maya gathered in the forest one evening, where stars scattered above like distant memories, their light faint against the warmth they felt toward this new world. Their peace was disrupted by a sudden message from their home planet, a directive from the Pack Council. It was not a summons to return but a final warning, a reminder of their place as exiles and a thinly veiled threat to punish them if they refused to comply with Pack demands. The message was both a lifeline back to their old world and a reminder of the past they had been trying to leave behind. For a moment, each of them was torn, knowing that by severing ties with their home, they were effectively giving up the last remnants of the lives they'd once led. But the decision came with surprising ease. They no longer saw themselves as exiles or rebels. Earth had become their sanctuary, a place where they could live on their own terms. Hector spoke first, her voice resolute as she declared that there was nothing left for them in the world that had cast them out. Her work with Ethan had given her a sense of purpose that her own people had denied her. She couldn't imagine leaving behind the progress she'd made here, the friendships, and the discoveries. For the first time, she felt the excitement of pursuing knowledge for the sake of growth, not power, and she was unwilling to let that go. Zyla followed, her voice softer but filled with conviction. Her experiences with Noah had opened her eyes to a world of expression, beauty, and connection. In her homeland, her life had been rigid, defined by rules and expectations, but here, she had learned that life could be art, a canvas painted with compassion and vulnerability. She spoke of how she had finally found freedom, not just the physical freedom of exile but an emotional freedom that had allowed her to feel deeply, and without fear. She couldn't bear the thought of returning to a place that stifled that freedom, of letting go of the love and joy she had found. Maya was last to speak, and as she voiced her thoughts, the certainty of her decision became clear. Her time with Daniel had taught her the value of patience, resilience, and kindness. She had seen strength redefined, not as dominance or superiority, but as the quiet courage to care and protect. The life she had built here, simple as it was meaningful. The thought of returning to a life where everything was measured by power and status filled her with dread. For her, Earth was no longer just an escape, it was home. Together, they made the choice to sever ties with their past, to fully embrace their future on Earth. In a quiet but symbolic act, they destroyed the last device that could connect them to the Pack, watching the technology that had once defined their lives crumble to dust. This final gesture marked their commitment to their new world, a promise that they would no longer live by the values they had once held. Instead, they would adopt the values they had come to love on Earth: compassion, resilience, and the strength found in connection. Over the following weeks, they shared their decision with the people closest to them. Each revelation was met not with shock or confusion, but with quiet understanding and acceptance. Ethan listened as Hector shared her story, not with judgment but with curiosity, his questions gentle, showing his desire to understand rather than condemn. She felt an overwhelming gratitude, realizing that her past no longer defined her in his eyes. She was not a former exile or a stranger from another world. To him, she was simply Hector, his friend and companion, someone who shared his passion for exploration and discovery. Noah responded to Zyla's story with a silent nod, a look of knowing in his eyes as if he had suspected her truth all along. He took her hand, a simple gesture that held a depth of meaning she had never felt before. He didn't need explanations or reassurances. He accepted her for who she was, for the life she had lived and the life she had chosen. In his art, she saw reflections of their journey together, each stroke a reminder of the love and trust they had built. She realized that his understanding was a gift, a rare kind of acceptance that only someone like Noah could offer. Daniel reacted to Maya's revelation with his usual easygoing smile, cracking a joke about how he always knew she was out of this world. His humor lightened her heart, and she knew he meant it sincerely, not as a dismissal but as an acknowledgement of the strange and beautiful bond they had formed. To Daniel, her origins didn't matter. He valued her for the person she had become here on Earth. His presence reminded her that love didn't require grandeur or drama. It thrived in simple acts of kindness, shared moments, and quiet support. Their lives settled into a new rhythm, each of them finding their place in the human world not as outsiders, but as part of the fabric of the community. Hector continued her work with Ethan, delving deeper into Earth's mysteries, fascinated by the endless layers of knowledge and discovery that humans pursued with such passion. Her days were filled with questions and answers, experiments and observations, each moment a reminder of the thrill of learning without limits. Zyla devoted herself to art, inspired by the beauty she saw around her, the landscapes and people, the emotions she had once suppressed. Her work became a reflection of her journey, each piece capturing the rawness of her transformation, the courage she had found to express herself freely. Through her art, she found healing, a way to bridge her past with her present, and she shared this gift with others, finding joy in the connections her work created. Maya, ever practical, found purpose in helping others, in building and fixing, in offering a steady hand to those in need. Her time with Daniel had shown her the value of simple acts of kindness, and she embraced this way of life with a quiet satisfaction. She became a part of the town's heartbeat, a dependable presence, someone people knew they could count on. Her life was no longer defined by survival or status but by the joy of making a difference, however small. Together, they built lives woven into the community, each of them cherished for who they were and what they brought to the people around them. They no longer thought of themselves as aliens or exiles but as part of something larger, a shared existence grounded in values they had come to understand and love. The fears, doubts, and insecurities of their past faded, replaced by a deep and abiding sense of belonging. In quiet moments, they would sometimes talk about their journey, reflecting on how far they had come and how much they had changed. They spoke of the unexpected love they had found, not just in others but in themselves, in the lives they had built and the people they had become. And as they looked out at the world they had once feared, they felt a profound peace, a certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. Their story became a testament to the strength of human values, a quiet but powerful reminder that love, compassion, and resilience were forces that could bridge even the vastness of space. In the end, Earth had not just been a punishment or a place of exile, it had been a gift, a chance to find themselves in the embrace of humanity. And in that gift, they found freedom, a future filled with hope, and a home that would always be theirs.